You're with the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for staying with us. There's no shortage of self-help books out there. With the tap of a button, you can order up advice on how to become a better communicator, how to stop smoking, maybe how to become a better parent or a better spouse. And now you can even seek out an entire book on lessons on how to flourish. That's thanks to author Daniel Coyle. Daniel is an author that splits time between Homer, Alaska, and Cleveland Heights. Both communities, he argues, create spaces that allow people to thrive. In his new book, Flourish, The Art of Building Meaning, Joy, and Fulfillment, he's found what he argues are flourishing, encouraging commonalities between Zingerman's Deli in Ann Arbor, the town of Norwich, Connecticut, and former Guardians coach Terry Francona. Daniel speaks tomorrow night at the Parma Snow branch of the Cuyahoga County Public Library at 7 p.m. and joins us now in studio to talk about his new book. Daniel, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie. It's fun to be here.
We appreciate it. If you want to join this conversation, if you have a question about flourishing, or maybe you want to share your own story of flourishing, you can call us at 866-578-0903. You can email us at soi@ideastream.org and send us a message on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Now, Daniel, you've written a lot about how people can perform at their best. Why did you choose the topic, the word flourish, for this book?
Deep down, it's because it's what we're all looking for. It's the big thing. It's joyful, meaningful growth. Not mere worldly success, but joyful, meaningful growth. And so it leads to a question, which is, where's that happening in today's sped up, mixed up world? And so I spent 5 years looking for places that embodied it, that were generative, joyful, meaningful connection. And I had two big surprises. The first surprise is nobody's doing it alone. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about self-help, but what I found in these places was shared help. What I found in these places was community. And the second big surprise is that they were all kind of doing it the same way. They were doing this thing where they would sort of pause and create deep connection. And then they would explore together and make a little mess and do a project and collective agency. So that's what it sort of comes down to, is like these moments of mattering, these moments of meaning, and then this shared exploration. And that's kind of the heartbeat of these different places.
So that sense that you arrived at, that it's bigger than the self when you're trying to find the ability to flourish or the best scenario to make that the most possible.
Yeah.
In your journey, you said 5 years working on this book.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to arrive at the conclusion that it is a larger sense outside the self to lead to flourishing?
Way too longer than it should have. I mean, I grew up, as a writer, you operate alone. I grew up in a culture of great individualism, you know, where we sort of thought, you think about geniuses and think about heroes and think about great leaders. But whenever you scratch the surface on those stories, they're always standing on a community, on an ecosystem. We're sort of told the story of like, well, life's a game and the best players move on up and they win, right? But when you actually look at their life at a slightly larger lens, what you always find is like these relationships, these connections. And we're pre-wired for them. That's the cool part, because like if you and I were to do a contest right now and we did it individually and we did it shared, our brains would light up way more at shared success than individual success. So what these places have in common is sort of a turn toward each other and also toward problems. Like solving problems together ends up being kind of the DNA of these places. But we're really trained in this day and age, and we're sold everything this day and age on a very individualized basis. So in some places, it's almost like we lack the instincts and the language, and we have to kind of remember how to be a community. And some of these places I visited were really good at kind of creating the conditions where they could pay attention in ways that activated that community.
One scenario you talk about in your book really had no choice but to pay attention to the value of community. I'm talking about the 33 Chilean miners who were trapped in a mine collapse in 2010, which you focus on in your book. And the miners were rescued after 69 days. They were in relatively good spirits. Tell us what that taught you about flourishing and what we should take away from that.
Yeah, if we had to trade places with anybody on the planet, there would not be those 33 guys. That's a tough
No,
spot,
I
right?
think
That's
so.
a tough spot. And when they first emerged, we all remember they emerged with great camaraderie and togetherness after enduring incredible privation, no food, obviously darkness, disease. And the original story that came out was, it was great leadership. It was great leadership. And then, but the second wave of research that went through showed that what happened were these particular moments where they created meaning together, where they created what I would call mattering mattering together, which is where you're seeing value in the person across from you, and you're also connecting to something bigger that you can add value to. And so those moments of surrendering, of letting go, and really that's the strange thing about this, is that we're sort of brought up with control everything and be focused and sort of approach life as a game. What they did in that moment was kind of to surrender to each other and figure out, okay, all of us are equal down here. How do we want to be together? What should the rules be? What rituals should we have? And they built this togetherness together. So it wasn't like some magic silver bullet. It's more like a practice. How can you practice sort of slowing down and paying deeper attention to the people around you in ways that gives them value and shows value and also connects you to something bigger at the same time?
You mentioned focus and the type of focus that people are practicing, I guess, for lack of a better word there. You interviewed a man named Ian McGilchrist in the book, and something you return to often related to that conversation with him is paying attention to things and focused attention versus broad awareness. So can you explain those differences and what that has to do with flourishing?
Yeah, I love that. It's really deep, and I was never taught it. We're taught that we have one form of attention. Like you have one form of attention. It's called focus. That's what attention is. That's actually wrong. It's sort of wrong. We actually have two forms of attention. One is task attention, very narrow, very controlling, which is designed evolutionarily because we want to find food, grab it, identify it, eat it, categorize it, control it. But there's also another form of attention, which is much broader and much deeper, and it's built around connection and nuance. And the trick is they can't both be switched on at once. There's only one. So the moment when you sort of let go of control and say, what is this really? What's going on here? What is this person? Where are we headed? That curiosity, that openness that these places have in common, where they're not trying to control each other. And it's kind of ironic because, we all sort of have a sense today that we're in a bit of an attentional crisis, phones in schools, and our attention has been sort of fractured and fragmented by all of this technology we're surrounded by all the time. And yet we don't have a model of attentional health. And I think in some ways that's what these ideas give us. The idea that, this narrow focus is sort of like sugar. Like, it's fine, but if you want to be attentionally healthy, it's good to understand that the building blocks of attention is not just one thing. It's actually two things. And those restorative moments when we slow down, open up, have ritual, pause, really let go of control a little bit, end up being the most kind of attentionally nourishing moments you can have.
Interesting. If you're just joining us here on The Sound of Ideas, we're talking with author Daniel Coyle, and his new book is called Flourish, The Art of Building Meaning, Joy, and Fulfillment. So we're talking about just that, flourishing, and how we can all get a little bit better at it. If you want to give us a call to be a part of this conversation, the number is 866-578-0903. You can also email us at soi@ideastream.org. Now, Daniel, in the book, you cite multiple studies throughout the book and experiments, some scientific data to kind of back up the things that you're talking about in the book. You also talk about the idea of the beautiful mess, which is something that you started talking about when we began this conversation today. People flourishing in those messy conditions. So how can we combine the two? Those things sort of seem a bit dichotomous to me, data and science, beautiful mess. How do those work together to get us to flourish?
I know. Well, the thing to realize is that we're sort of taught and trained to be a little allergic to mess. We want our projects to be neat. We want our dinner tables to be tidy. We want our days to be tightly time-boxed. And yet, when we were talking about, if you want to grow, I think you have to accept the fact that machines are really clean, but actual growth is messy. Toddlers are messy, and they're really important phase to go through. There's something called complex dynamic systems theory that really captures this, but the basic idea is that the mess isn't the obstacle. The mess is the doorway. If you're going to build anything, if you're going to create anything new, you kind of have to disrupt the existing order and shake it up a little bit. And I have to say, as a Clevelander, I never met anybody who was better at it than Terry Francona.
Okay.
The guy, he was messy.
And you worked with Terry Francona. You worked with the Guardians for 10 years. So you've got experience there.
Still am. This is my 13th year as a consultant, part-time. It's sort of like a permanent intern, basically, is my role. But I get a front row seat to sort of how they're doing it. And the Guardians are kind of a remarkable organization. If people have been noticing, they don't have a very high payroll, but they have won almost as many games as the New York Yankees, and they've spent $1.3 billion less than the Yankees. So they're doing more with less. They're creating something new. They're adding up to more. And they do that. I think, there was always a time when Terry was the manager that the season would be getting a little bit out of control and not performing so well, and everybody would want him to whip the guys into shape. But he always was very patient about that. He always sort of let the team assemble itself. He endured the mess so that it could self-organize. And self-organization, which is really agency, right? It's really somebody feeling efficacious and taking control. And we know in our own lives that that's a core need, that need for agency. So sure, you can whip things in your life into control, but it's much better, especially if you're in teams, especially if you're dealing with people, to create conditions with clear guardrails where they can navigate themselves and self-organize. That's one thing Terry was really great at. He just had, a small handful of rules. Be on time, respect the game, never back down from a challenge. But within that space, those are the guardrails. Within that space, organize yourself. How do you want to do it?
All of this sounds like it really does fall in line with that conversation about that individual focus versus the broader awareness type of mindset. So do you have any tips for people to practice that broader awareness?
Yeah. There's something called the yellow door that I really like that was an idea from University of Columbia, or Columbia University psychologist Lisa Miller. We normally go through life like looking for green doors, meaning go, it's open, or red doors, meaning don't go here. And yellow doors, life gets a little bit more interesting when you start paying attention to yellow doors, which are signals that maybe, like an opportunity that might be there, might not be there. That's one powerful thing. And the other thing would be to sort of think about friction boosting. We normally look at friction as something in our lives that's to be avoided. And obviously we live in a whole world now that is absolutely built to isolate us and have us avoid all friction. And yet those moments of friction where there's a little vulnerability, where there's a mistake, where you're walking to the drugstore instead of having it delivered, those create those little moments of interaction and connection that really, that's what communities are made of.
Okay, WVIZ PBS is a platform here at IdeaStream Public Media. So I have to ask you, of course, about Mr. Rogers, which is mentioned in your book. You cite Fred Rogers as a person who allowed children to flourish. Why was that?
He was unique. I mean, that show, there were a lot of good TV programs led by a lot of very kind people at that time. But when Mr. Rogers was canceled, I think 3,000 mothers showed up saying, almost rioting, like you don't want to get 3,000 mothers angry. And they did. They absolutely felt, people identified so closely with this television show. So when you look at the structure of that television show, what was he doing that was different? And it was creating this open, responsive space that allowed people's relational attention to click on. When you see normal kids television, a lot of it is frenetic and it's this causes that, and it's very narrow focus. And this was something totally different. Whenever he said anything like, look over here, he would pause and wait for the kid to do that, and as if it was a living conversation. So he was creating these, I would call them awakening cues. And it created what we're built to create, which is deep connection. And the depth of his connection was built on such tiny moments. That was the beautiful thing about it. And I think that's the lesson to us all, that these little moments are huge. These little moments where you can shift your attention a few degrees. It's not a lot of stuff about sort of self-help is all about like transformation, like huge change. But the lesson in this book over and over again, it's like a slight rechanneling. It's not some massive change. It's like, let's take a second, look around and connect to the people who are around us.
Speaking of connecting to the people around us, you mentioned an exercise that Mr. Rogers had people do. We've got about 2 minutes left. Do we have time for you to walk me through it?
You bet.
Okay, can you walk me through it? Let's do it.
He did this regularly. He did it especially at the Emmy Awards one year. So picture the crowd, all rich, famous actors. He said, all of us have people in our lives who have helped us get to where we are today. Some of them are alive, some of them are gone. But would you just take 10 seconds with me right now, thinking about the people who loved you into being,
okay.
The people in your life who loved you into being. And then he said, I'll keep the time.
Okay, so I'm starting now. I'm thinking internally. Should I be thinking out loud?
No, internally is it.
Okay.
Internally is it.
Yeah, these are some great memories that I'm thinking back on, people who have loved me into being.
And then whoever those people are, how thrilled they must be to see where you're at right now and what you're doing.
That's a nice thought.
And that's it. it's just really simple, but it's just like all these things, just like this slight zoom out where you get out of the present moment and you just sort of say, what's really happening here? What is this all about? And who am I connected to? And those moments end up being like the oxygen of the ecosystem, like constantly grounding in those moments, which modern life pushes us out of, right? But those moments end up being really nourishing.
All right, we have just a few moments here. Final thoughts you would like to share with anyone who's considering what they can do to flourish.
Yeah, it's not a massive. I guess what I've found in my experience here is it's not a massive lift. It's more like a slight rechanneling where you're trying to find these moments. That's one theme. The other is that things that seem stupid are actually smart. Things that seem like a waste of time, like it might have seemed like a waste of time to do that pause, but yet that ends up being very nourishing and good.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Daniel Coyle, the author of Flourish, speaking at the Cuyahoga County Public Library's Parma Snow Branch tomorrow night, February 12th at 7 p.m. Thanks for the time, Daniel.
Thanks, Stephanie.